Have you ever wondered if reality is watching you back? Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this idea intrigues you, because the very act of your attention might be shaping more than just your feed. Somewhere between the pulse of thought and the stillness of being, the universe listens. Not passively, not blindly, but in a trembling responsiveness that betrays a truth we often forget. Awareness is not a witness to reality. It is the sculptor. At the heart of quantum physics lies a paradox. A subatomic particle, such as an electron, behaves not as a fixed entity, but as a wave of potential. It does not possess a definitive location until it is observed. Before the act of measurement, it exists everywhere in a haze of probabilities. But once the gaze is cast, once the observer becomes involved, the wave collapses. The particle chooses a place, a moment, a reality. This is the observer effect, and it is not merely a quirk of laboratory physics. It is a mirror held to consciousness itself. Imagine light passing through two slits. When no one looks, it dances through both, weaving interference patterns like ripples from overlapping raindrops. But when a measuring device peers through, the pattern vanishes. The light picks a path, one slit, one decision. The ghost of possibility evaporates in the light of observation. In that collapse, a question blooms. What role does attention play in the unfolding of the real? What if the universe is not an object, to be dissected, but a song that only takes form when listened to? The smallest fragments of matter, the deepest rhythms of being, do not conform to static laws, but shift in the presence of awareness. And so the experiment becomes a metaphor, vast and intimate. What if every glance carves a corner of the cosmos into being? What if the gaze does not pass over the world but participates in it? In the space between subject and object, something alchemical occurs. Awareness, elusive and immeasurable, does not merely record. It ignites. It alters. It brings into being. The act of watching is not passive, it is an invocation, not only in particle chambers and quantum fields, but in daily life. We witness echoes of this truth. A person watched behaves differently. A plant flourishes under mindful care. Even ideas shift shape when spoken aloud, caught in the net of another's attention. Consciousness, it seems, is not content to observe. It dances with the observed. Each moment of awareness a vote cast in the great election of what exists. The world, then, is not fixed. It is a field of suggestion, a sea of maybe. And it waits, breath held, for the moment of attention. The instant something is looked upon, whether a particle, a memory, or a dream, it changes. What then does it mean to see clearly? To become aware, truly aware, is not to receive a picture of the world, but to shape it. To know that your focus is not a beam that reveals, but a flame that burns, molds, remakes. There is power in perception. It is not merely personal. It is generative. You are not a camera. You are a creator. Reality is not delivered to you. It coalesces around you. And if this is true, then everything you turn your gaze toward trembles with potential. Your beliefs become architects. Your questions, chisels, your emotions, brushes dipped in probability, painting the canvas of now. In the silence of your thoughts, the universe listens. In the stillness of your awareness, it prepares to answer. Not with certainty, but with echoes, resonances, reverberations of the possible. To observe is to offer the world a seed. To attend is to water it. What grows may surprise you. For even the light that travels vast distances shifts under your gaze, acknowledging your presence not as intruder, but as collaborator. The observer is not separate. The observer is entangled. Each act of attention folds space, reweaves time, remixes the ingredients of existence. You do not find the world, you help form it. The question that arises is no longer whether we affect reality, but how deeply, how consciously, how reverently. The gaze is sacred. Awareness is divine. To watch is to participate in creation. And in that truth, quiet and astonishing, The universe offers itself to you, not as something already made, but as something always becoming. The mind drifts like a lantern on dark water, casting spheres of attention that shimmer against the unseen currents beneath. Each glimmer touches ripples of possibility, soft coordinates where matter trembles at the promise of form. In the armor of habit, we often mistake stability for truth. But in the hush below routine pulses a subtler law. Reality arranges itself according to the gravity of awareness. Where focus lingers, the quantum flux aligns, selecting one path from countless, weaving a single thread through the loom of what if. Consider the breath, a silent metronome marking invisible intervals between thought and flesh. When inhalation becomes mindful, the body steadies. Neurochemical tides sync with slow, deliberate cadence. Neurons fire in ordered constellations rather than scattered sparks. Attention spreads through synapses, crystallizing fleeting potentials into patterned circuits. What was random assumes architecture. What was doubtful finds coherence. The observer resides not solely behind the eyes, but within the pulsing atlas of the nervous system. Each cell eavesdropping on consciousness, responding with molecular choreography. Beneath that choreography lie fields of resonance. Oscillations inside microtubular structures whisper to vacuum fluctuations, flirting with energies beyond ordinary measure. These whispers do not obey clocks or rulers. They drift in quantum, non-locality, where distance dissolves and simultaneity blooms. Such resonances carry the signature of awareness, translating intangible inclination into tangible shape, coaxing electrons toward specific orbits, guiding synaptic gaps to bridge through neurotransmitter release. Intention becomes architecture at scales both microscopic and cosmic. The universe does not merely allow participation, it invites collaboration. Cities rise as grand experiments in collective focus. Towers of concrete and glass follow the alignment of shared vision. Urban symphonies play out in electrical grids, traffic flows, data streams, metallic reflections of billions of observations braided into infrastructure. Streetlights flare at dusk because someone decided darkness should not dictate movement. Satellite constellations circle the planet, sculpted by the need to witness the distance between continents. Every invention is an artifact of observation leveraged into permanence. The shaping power of awareness extends beyond technology into subtler terrains of emotion. A thought of compassion radiates biochemical warmth. Oxytocin, serotonin, tiny messengers that soften muscular armor and slow the heart's drum. Anxious vigilance tightens another hormonal script, saturating tissues with adrenaline, cortisol, acid signatures that corrupt sleep and erode immunity. Chemical alphabets translate inner gaze into physiological prose, rewriting the body with each sustained sentiment. Attention is a physician or a saboteur, prescribing wellness or decline, its diagnosis restated every heartbeat. Memory, too, is sculpted by the observer. Neural archives do not store experience as static reels. They re-encode each recollection according to present awareness. The past is a library, rewritten whenever pages are turned. A painful moment revisited through forgiveness bleeds its sharpness, neurons pruning synapses that once anchored the sting. Contrast returns if revisited in bitterness. The past shifts like wet clay, malleable beneath the fingertips of attention, reminding us that yesterdays are never finished until awareness releases them. Even time yields to participation. Chronological rigor is a human instrument, but the felt sense of duration stretches when wonder enlarges perception and shrinks when boredom narrows it. Moments of awe seem infinite, tedious hours evaporate, unnoticed. Awareness dilates seconds into panoramas or compresses them into pinpricks. Physics may keep perfect tempo, yet the personal metronome dances to the observer's rhythm. On cosmic stages, telescopes peer into accelerating galaxies. Photons leaving ancient stars arrive inside polished instruments and meet a consciousness, hungry for origin stories. Each captured image collapses millennia of transit into a single revelation. We are looking at ourselves, scattered across distance, mirrored in nuclear furnaces that burned before Earth had oceans. The observer's gaze becomes a bridge, collapsing temporal gulfs, fusing primordial fire to present breath. The universe gains self-recognition through every lens turned skyward. In the silent microseconds between stimulus and perception lies the workshop where reality is assembled. Variables swirl, belief, expectation, unspoken bias before they crystallize into narrative. A doorway can appear as obstacle or invitation depending on the cast of attention. A stranger's glance can be threat or connection, encoded by earlier observations nested in memory. The mechanics of collapse play out not only in laboratories, but within the interpretive machinery of mind, remaking mundane events into personalized universes. Language itself is a syntax of observation. Words hover as possibilities until chosen. Once spoken, they summon images, emotions, commitments. A single line of poetry can pivot despair into resolve. A careless insult can rupture delicate harmonies. Phonemes are particles that strike the ear and collapse into meaning, sculpting shared reality between speaker and listener. Every conversation is a quantum experiment, each sentence an entangling measurement. Under laboratory light, scientists coax entangled photons toward opposite detectors, confirming that choice of measurement here affects outcome there. Distance is secondary to correlation. Likewise, human awareness entangles with distant hearts through empathy. The thought of a loved one can prompt a message at the exact moment they need comfort, synchronicities threading invisible corridors between minds. Entanglement is not an exotic rarity. It permeates relationships, art, intuition, a constant reminder that separation is merely apparent. The silence of meditation reveals the raw canvas. When thoughts settle, perception becomes spacious, less tinted by habitual filters. In that stillness, the boundary between seer and seen blurs. Breathing earth, flowing blood. Humming stars belong to the same matrix of noticing. Identity loosens, and awareness discovers itself as field rather than point. From this vantage, participation becomes responsibility. Each focus, each feeling, each story contributes pigment to the communal fresco of existence. Responsibility need not breed caution alone. It can awaken creativity. Knowing that attention is generative, one might cultivate wonder deliberately. Sow kindness like seeds. Design inner landscapes abundant with possibility. A mind tended with curiosity invites realities tuned to exploration. Observing beauty fertilizes beauty. Witnessing courage amplifies courage. Reality grows according to rituals of attention, and each moment offers new soil. The invisible handshake between consciousness and cosmos endures unbroken. Whether through a microscope tracing the jitter of molecules, or through a dreamer contemplating midnight constellations, observation writes the code. In that script lies freedom, to choose focus, to refine perception, to sculpt inner and outer worlds with disciplined curiosity and generous intention. The universe waits, pliant as molten glass, spinning on the breath of the observer, ready to assume shapes as intricate as the imagination dares. Consciousness is not a lantern shining outward, but a mirror remembering itself through reflection. What it touches, it alters. What it beholds, it becomes. It is not confined to skull and skin, but seeps into every corner of reality that answers back. Awareness does not float above the world, it folds within it, woven into the fabric of trees, oceans, pulses, and stars. The observer is never outside the experiment. The experiment is never separate from the one who watches. Reality is not a stable object awaiting discovery. It is a tension between potential and perspective, a breath held in the void that only exhales when called by attention. In this cosmic theater, consciousness is both the actor and the script, the witness and the dream. Every phenomenon waits to be named, and the naming draws it into form. Consider the simple act of looking at your hand. Nerve signals fire, muscles subtly adjust, photons bounce, and behind it all, an ancient knowing awakens. I am seeing. That flicker of self-awareness, that whisper of identity, is more than biology. It is creation itself, concentrating into flesh, into form, into meaning. To perceive is not to catalog, it is to ignite. The universe hides in plain sight until attention unlocks it. Beneath the visible sits the quantum world. Probabilities instead of certainties, energy patterns instead of edges, influence instead of isolation. An electron spins and orbits and tunnels in ways that defy logic until it is observed. Then it chooses. Then it resolves. The observer draws a single path from the infinite, a strand of story from the loom of the unknown. And if subatomic particles obey the pull of consciousness, what then of thought itself? The mental landscape is sculpted not by what appears, but by what is focused upon. Thoughts spiral in and out of awareness, but only those selected by observation. Take root anchoring into emotion, action, and identity. Repetition strengthens them. Attention nourishes them. The mind is a garden, the gardener is the observer. In this garden, belief is the water. Each belief filters the world through its lens, bending experience to its script. A person who believes in hostility will find it in every glance, in every silence. One who believes in goodness will harvest kindness in unlikely places. Neither belief changes the facts, but the facts arrive already filtered, already chosen by the structures of expectation and perception. The observer effect does not only operate in science, it is the mechanism of every life, every moment. A child seen with love blooms differently than one seen with judgment. A relationship watched with gratitude grows richer than one monitored with suspicion. The eye alters the subject, the heart shapes what it beholds, and memory, that quiet curator of self, is not exempt. Memories are not static archives. They shift and swell with every visit, molded by the observer who returns to them. A wound can become a scar of strength or a source of perpetual pain, depending on the gaze it receives. The past is not behind us. It is carried in perception and reshaped with every look. Even identity is not fixed but fluid under the gaze of awareness. You are not a single self, but a constellation of selves, orbiting around the gravity of what you choose to see. The confident self arises when you observe capability. The fearful one when you observe risk. You become what you most consistently attend to. This is not metaphor but function. Focus is the engine of becoming. Across disciplines and traditions, this truth echoes. In spiritual practice, the observer is called the witness, the soul, the Atman. In neuroscience, it is the emergent property of cognition. In quantum mechanics, it is the cause of collapse. Different names, same force, the invisible hand that stabilizes chaos into cosmos. The unmeasurable glance that gives time direction and matter shape. And so the question is no longer whether observation creates reality, but how deep that creation runs. It touches thought, behavior, memory, body, space. But it also touches future. Anticipation is a form of observation across time. What you expect sculpts what arrives. A life spent anticipating failure bends toward failure. One that anticipates miracles leaves space for their unfolding. The observer effect extends beyond now. It colonizes possibility. Each breath, each thought, each choice is a measurement, a wave function collapse. What appears in your world arises not simply from action, but from gaze. You are not passive in this existence. You are a sculptor of frequencies, a conductor of outcomes, a selector of which layer of reality to inhabit. Nothing is truly neutral under awareness. It either nourishes or diminishes, flourishes or decays, depending on how it is held. To observe is to connect. It is to say, this exists because I see it, and through that seeing, it becomes more than shadow. It becomes shape. This is the quiet magic behind every act of attention. Whether it is a sunlit leaf trembling on a branch or a fear whispered in a dark corridor of the mind, it answers to your gaze. It opens, it responds. And what of the gaze turned inward? The observer effect within the soul? Self-awareness is the highest alchemy, not judgment, not analysis, but pure witnessing. When the self watches itself without defense, resistance, or story, transformation begins, not because something is added, but because illusion is released. Like the particle selecting a location, the self selects truth, presence, clarity only, when it is seen in the light of unconditional awareness. The world outside and the world within are reflections, endlessly folding into one another. To observe the world is to reveal the self. To observe the self is to reshape the world. The observer is both source and seeker, sculptor and sculpture, the still point from which all reality spirals outward. And in this spiraling, the universe does not remain silent, it watches back. Across the lattice of shared perception, countless eyes converge upon single moments, braiding individual gazes into a fabric of collective influence. When millions watch a sunrise through screens and windows, the dawn becomes more than a routine. Rotation. It swells with cultural weight, a symbol reborn in simultaneous hearts. Mass attention amplifies nuance. A lone violinist in a subway station is transformed into a global phenomenon by a surge of recordings and reposts, the simple melody charged with communal meaning. Consciousness does not merely stack, it resonates, forming standing waves that echo through society, shaping politics, commerce, and myth with crescendos of focus. Networks of neurons mirror networks of minds. Viral memes leap synapses of the global brain. Each share a synaptic spark. Collective anticipation bends markets, drives migrations, seeds revolutions. The observer effect scales beyond the lab to entire civilizations, where stock prices rise on confidence alone and fall at the hint of fear, though the factories still hum unchanged. Futures contracts, weather forecasts, political polls, each is a measurement that nudges reality, collapsing economic potentials into concrete outcomes. The map becomes the territory because enough observers believe it must. Every symbol acts as a lens. Flags, currencies, and constellations of branding channel attention into forms that persist across generations. Their survival is not due to dyes or stitched fibers, but to unbroken chains of observation. Let a symbol drift from awareness, and it fades like a ghost unremembered. Let it burn under focused regard, and it gains mass, magnetizing resources and allegiance. Thus, stories rooted in ancestral fires still steer hands that design satellites, and prayers uttered in quiet rooms ripple into policies that redraw borders. Ritual is the choreography of focused perception. From candlelit vigils to scientific conferences, humans assemble to synchronize awareness, magnifying intent. A chant pulses through throats, aligning heartbeats into a single drum. A peer review. Session frames hypotheses in the unforgiving light of collective scrutiny, coaxing truth from conjecture. Rituals anchor consciousness to specific frequencies. Repeated, they carve grooves in cultural memory, guiding future focus. The sacred and the empirical share this skeleton of structured observation, differing only in attire. Art invites a slower gaze, stretching the moment of measurement. A painting holds pigment still, yet every viewer completes it anew. Colors bloom richer under reverence. Patterns emerge under analysis. Hidden motifs whisper to those who linger. Music unfolds over a deliberate dance with attention. Silence sets expectation, cadence leads the ear, crescendo releases tension. The listener's perception, anticipating and resolving, becomes part of the composition. Masterworks endure because they remain fertile ground for observation, forever collapsing into fresh interpretations. Environmental realities also pivot on the compass of awareness. A rainforest unseen is statistics. A rainforest visited, filmed, mourned, becomes a living protagonist in humanity's narrative, rallying global will toward preservation. When satellites capture dwindling ice shelves, the data alone is inert, but broadcast it widely, and lifestyles adjust, policies shift, entire industries retrofit their blueprints. Ecological futures hinge on the spotlight of consciousness. What receives the gaze is granted possibility of rescue. What languishes in shadow drifts toward oblivion. Technology extends the reach of attention like telescopic nerves. Sensors parse oceans. Algorithms monitor tremors. Rovers touch alien dust, all reporting back to central consciousness. Yet observation through machinery retains its alchemical charge. A distant exoplanet, once mere equation, becomes a potential sanctuary the moment its image flickers onto a monitor. Funding surges, engineers convene, dreamers chart trajectories. Metal and code act as proxies, but the collapse of potential into action still occurs only when a mind engages the feed. Even dreams illustrate the rule, lucid moments when the tame sleeper realizes they observe their own vision, unlock surreal agency. Walls dissolve, gravity pauses. The dreamscape, aware of being watched, softens under intent. Waking life is no different in essence, though its inertia is greater. Within circadian rhythms, heavy atoms and entrenched narratives resist sudden metamorphosis, yet they remain pliable under sustained perception. Repetition etches new neural roots, habits sculpt matter, societies pivot across decades, slow lucidity, but lucidity nonetheless. To master observation is to refine the quality of attention. Unfocused awareness disperses like mist. Concentrated awareness slices like light through a prism, revealing hidden spectra. Practices of mindfulness, deep study, and empathetic listening polish the lens, allowing subtler phenomena to surface. With finely honed perception, synchronicities multiply. Timely encounters, intuitive insights, solutions appearing at the brink of need. Threads of order previously invisible now gleam through the tapestry of chance. There is a responsibility. In this, every indulgence in cynicism inks a darker hue onto the collective canvas. Every act of wonder adds luminosity. Attention is a currency that buys tomorrow's probabilities. Spend it on despair, and the world fulfills that contract. Invest it in possibility, and dormant seeds stir beneath the soil of the yet-to-be. The observer effect demands intentional spectatorship, a guardianship of gaze, lest unconscious. Focus feed the very outcomes we dread. Yet this stewardship is not burden alone, it is invitation. With awareness as chisel, humanity may sculpt realities of cooperation, equity, and exploration. The first stroke is vision, to see the possible, shimmering inside the actual. The next is collective accord, millions of eyes leaping onto that glimmer until it solidifies. Futures once relegated to fiction step forward, clad in infrastructures coaxed into existence by relentless observation. The cosmos, vast and unhurried, remains attentive to this experiment. Starlight crossing eons arrives as silent applause, photons applauding every mind that dares to look back. The universe does not decree meaning, it echoes it. Through each attentive moment, human consciousness inscribes purpose onto the spinning void, crafting constellations of significance where once lay only distance. In this communion, nothing is passive. The chair you sit upon answers gravity's inquiry because mass itself is a conversation with the Higgs field, matter listening to the question of existence. Likewise, your awareness listens to possibility and replies with choice. Nose to screen, ear to heartbeat, eye to horizon, consciousness surveys the unformed and speaks. Become. Reality obeys, for it must. It is language awaiting grammar, music awaiting rhythm, clay awaiting touch. Awareness rests at the threshold where emptiness steadies into form, a silent kiln whose only fuel is notice. Each moment is raw ore, unfixed, unpromised, awaiting the smelting heat of perception to blaze it into shape. As the kiln brightens, probability liquefies and pours itself into channels carved by intention. Reality is molten gold, but the mold belongs to the eye and the heart that guide it. Focus is no longer mere function, it is sacrament. The slightest shift in attention is a prayer that reverberates through quantum potentials, bending trajectories of atoms and attitudes alike. A single choice of emphasis can nudge an argument toward reconciliation, can tilt a culture toward courage, can set sunlight glancing off a dust mote so the ordinary erupts into wonder. The cosmos keeps nothing in reserve. It grants its whole treasury to whatever point consciousness adorns with curiosity. Beneath the swirl of daily noise, awareness whispers directives to biology. Cells translate perception into chemistry. protein cascades echoing hope or dread. Immune armies rally under banners of optimism, falter under clouds of despair. Neural pathways thicken when tread by confidence, atrophy when ceded to resignation. The body is a cathedral whose architecture shifts with every homily of thought. To think with reverence is to restore stained glass windows of possibility, letting more light pour through marrow and memory. Communities, too, reconfigure when their collective gaze unites. Shared vision is gravitational. It gathers scattered aims into orbits of mutual purpose. Streets bloom with murals where citizens decide to see beauty. Lawmakers draft unexpected reforms where voters refuse to avert their eyes from injustice. Even silence becomes activism when directed as fierce, unwavering attention upon truths long obscured. Nothing outruns the horizon once enough minds rise to greet it. Time itself complies with chosen sight. Futures hover like branching constellations, each glimmering path awaiting designation. By rehearsing a scenario in thought, awareness invites its particles to rehearsal on the stage of tomorrow. The letters of destiny rearrange under observation, spelling outcomes once considered unreachable. In laboratories, retrocausal experiments hint that measurements in the present can tidy probabilities in the past. Likewise, intentions voiced today may tidy sorrows long gone, transmuting old wounds into wisdom by the backward reach of compassionate regard. At the deepest recursion of the loop, observer and observed shed distinction. Awareness sees awareness seeing, an infinite hall of mirrors where no first image exists. Here, the self dissolves into lucid spaciousness so vast that galaxies resemble flecks within a single granule of insight. In this expanse, there is no outside vantage, only intimate belonging, consciousness folding back on itself like a Mobius ribbon. Creation is revealed not as event, but as ongoing verb, a ceaseless act of noticing that blesses the void with continual genesis. What then remains of fear? Only the portions still unexamined. Shadows persist where curiosity hesitates, where attention refuses to enter. Yet the moment awareness steps across that threshold, darkness forfeits its claim, exposed as merely unlit space. The universe is not against you, it is awaiting your lamp. Every problem is an unopened door, every grief a corridor whose walls dissolve when faced. To observe fearlessly is to publish a proclamation of liberation on the parchment of the real. Mastery is humility in practice, the recognition that the power to sculpt worlds is matched by the duty to sculpt wisely. Attention must be stewarded, as farmers steward water in drought, channeling it toward roots that nourish all. Vigilance without fixation, enthusiasm without attachment, such poise keeps perception supple, capable of mid-course generosity. The sage gardener of reality wastes no gaze on cynicism's weeds, yet denies no weed its lesson. Each is compost. For richer soil, celebrate this birthright of shaping. Let vision linger on what uplifts, and those seeds will germinate. Let gratitude illuminate even routine objects, the cup, the screen, the pulse in the wrist, and they will glow with context, revealing alliances previously unseen. Tell stories that honor complexity, and complexity will yield coherent patterns. Breathe presence into each gesture, and seemingly inert minutes will burst into creative surplus. Nothing is too small to answer the summons of deliberate sight. When eyes close at night, awareness does not vanish, it voyages. Dreams conduct rehearsals, refine metaphors, transmit messages in symbolic code. Morning's first thought is a conductor's baton. With that upward sweep, the day's symphony cues its opening chord. Choose its key wisely, major or minor, dissonant or resolved, for musicians unseen tune themselves to that exact pitch. By twilight, echoes of the chosen note will pulse through every encounter, proof of how a single vantage orchestrates the manifold. As species, we stand inside a collective experiment whose apparatus spans oceans and orbits. Climate trends, technologic thresholds, social inflection points, all pivot on where joint attention settles next. If we watch with apathy, entropy accelerates. If we watch with awe, innovation compounds. The planetary future is not pre-written, It is quivering with superposed possibilities, waiting for the steady collective gaze that will coax one waveform into permanence. The decisive instrument is not yet invented hardware, but the ancient, portable laboratory of consciousness itself. So sharpen the lens, polish the mirror, raise the lamp. Observe with intention, stitched from wonder, discipline, and care. Every mindful breath is a measurement that slides reality toward greater coherence. Each act of deliberate noticing upgrades the blueprint of existence. The cosmos is listening with ears made of probabilities, eager to echo back whatever melody you sing into its hush. If these insights resonate, amplify them. Share this journey with friends, subscribe for new explorations, and let your voice add brightness to the field. Together, let us focus on a world worth witnessing into being.